My name is Sander and I'm a big fan of coffee, cocoa and the climate. And since you're watching, I'm gonna bet that you're too. When you're like us, you love talking about how we can produce all the commodities we love so much while remaining within our planetary boundaries. This week on the Carblecast, I want to do it slightly different. And instead of talking about larger industry trends, I want to talk about something that we have been working on at Carble specifically, which is our updated methodology for rewarding carbon storage in shade-grown coffee and cocoa. Let's dig in. Around 10 years ago, I visited Ethiopia for the first time and I went into the coffee growing regions. And when I met the first farmer there who showed me his coffee farm, I didn't get it. I didn't understand what I was looking at because I only saw a forest instead of what I had expected. I had expected to see row after row of coffee trees. So I asked the farmer to explain to me what I was looking at. And he explained that this is how coffee has been grown in Ethiopia for generations already, under the shade of the forest canopy and without any chemical input such as fertilizers or pesticides. And I've always remained intrigued by this conversation. And much more recently, when I started reading academic literature about coffee agroforestry, I found out that this comes with so many benefits. Not only in terms of coffee quality, but especially in terms of carbon storage and also biodiversity. Coffee agroforestry in Ethiopia stores roughly the same amount of carbon as is stored in primary forest. And in terms of biodiversity, we see the same species richness as well as the same types of species that we would see in natural forest. This type of coffee agroforestry also comes with a downside, which is that the yields are lower. Farmers can harvest fewer kilograms of coffee from the same plot of land. Because farmers face a lot of income pressure, there's a massive incentive to cut down shade trees and plant more coffee trees and increase the yields of their farms. This decrease in shade cover and the resulting decrease in biomass that we see on the farms is one of the leading causes of the carbon footprint of commodities like coffee and cocoa. Now, if I were a sustainability manager at a coffee roasting or trading company and I have net zero goals to meet, then I have roughly two options. The first one is we focus on carbon removals by planting new shade trees on coffee farms, which of course takes some time to grow and absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. The downside is that what we've heard from the field is that farmers are not really interested in doing this because it would mean a reduction in their income from coffee sales, which would have to be compensated for by carbon payments, which they're of course not used to and which may not be as long-term viable as their coffee sales. Additionally, we've seen that the amount of carbon removals that can be realized in a setting like this is actually really low. So per hectare, we cannot remove a lot of additional carbon from the atmosphere. Alternatively, as a sustainability manager, I can work on avoiding the additional reduction of shade cover on the farms where I source my coffee. And despite the much larger volume potential in terms of carbon emission reductions, there are currently no widely accepted methodologies for monetizing existing shade trees on coffee and cocoa supply chains. As a side note, remember the difference between carbon removals, which are generated by increasing biomass on a plot and therefore absorbing carbon from the atmosphere, and carbon emission reductions, which are the avoidance of releasing carbon into the atmosphere by cutting down shade trees or other trees on the farm plots. To help companies working on this, we updated our methodology for rewarding carbon storage in shade-grown commodities. We are excited to start testing our updated methodology for rewarding carbon storage in shade-grown coffee and cocoa in 2024. If you work in the coffee and cocoa space and you're interested in partnering with us on this, please reach out. You can find us on LinkedIn or at carble.co.